I'm going to have the pleasure this evening unusual pleasure this evening of being in conversation with Mike Pell. Unusual because usually I'm standing at the podium introducing other people who are going to be in conversation, but tonight it's my turn to ask some questions. Mike and I got to know each other last January when we were in conversation during the New York Historical's Palm Beach weekend, annual Palm Beach weekend. But there is just so much more that I think we'll learn this evening, and now that I've got to know him a bit, I think I'll be better at asking him questions.
But we had a lot of fun though, right?
We did have a lot of fun, indeed. So Mike is the director of Microsoft Garage, which is the company's innovative unit, and he has been in the lead on a huge number of innovations, including Adobe, PDF files, and the user experience for smartphones, among much, much else. He's the author of 3 books. His latest is Visualizing Business. Here it is. And,
did you notice that?
And actually, you can buy his books. They're on sale in our NY History bookstore following the program, which is on the 77th Street side of the building. I have a lot more that I could tell you about Mike and his background, but I thought I would introduce him a little bit more intimately by asking him some questions. First of all, you know, how he got into AI. I mean, what did you want to be when you were a kid?
Like every kid, I wanted to be an astronaut.
Okay.
Right? And a Formula One driver. I mean, I grew up in the 70s, of course, so the space race, the Apollo program. I loved all of that. I used to lay on the floor in the living room and draw pictures of all the spacecraft and dream about being a Formula One driver. So I always loved technology, always loved design and art.
And so how did you pursue your dream? Did you study whatever you study? I honestly don't know what you studied to become an astronaut.
Well, the truth is as little as possible. No, I was a really great student. I was like a straight A student until I discovered girls, but that's a different story. But as a kid, I was an artist, and so I loved drawing, I loved painting, loved photography. And my teacher in high school had gone to RISD, Rhode Island School of Design. She really, really, really wanted me to go there. I thought, you know what? I'm growing up in Scranton, Pennsylvania. I'm getting away from here, as far away from the snow and ice as I could possibly get. So I went to the University of Arizona in Tucson, right? Which, by the way, had a really great photography program. You probably know there's an Ansel Adams collection there. I wanted to study fine art. And as soon as I got there, I realized that my high school art teacher, although she had best of intentions, really didn't teach me much about the foundational elements of fine art. And I was never going to make it in the fine art program. So I took a programming class, which was, you know, in the ancient days, and I'm ashamed to even say, but I learned how to program on punch cards, like way back when. I know, right? I'm not old. But I figured, you know, I can probably make more money with this computer stuff than I could with art. So I stuck to that, but I always tried to keep art and design as part of what I did with technology. So that's how I ended up, you know, being in the technology field, but still being a designer.
So what did you do when you graduated from college?
Well, this thing happened one day. I saw the Super Bowl commercial that Apple had made, you know, for the Macintosh, which was 1984. And there was a program on the Mac called Mac Paint. And if you're old enough, you might remember it was the first painting program. And being an artist, I absolutely fell in love with this paint program. I thought it was the greatest thing I'd ever seen. And I loved it so much, I started a Macintosh software company and learned everything I could about software development, and went on and ran that company for 5 years, invented the font menu, which was the very first thing that I did, which was, you know, when you click on the font menu and you see the fonts drawn on their own face. It didn't used to be that way. They were all the same. And I couldn't stand that because I kept picking the wrong one. So I hacked the system, made them draw that way, and that was the beginning of starting a software company.
That's great. That's pretty cool. What brought you to New York?
Well, my family had always been in Manhattan. Both my mother and father grew up on Riverside Drive, a block apart, never knew each other until they got to college. So both sets of my grandparents, of course, were here in Manhattan. So as a little kid, I was always around New York. I grew up in Scranton because my dad took a job for my Uncle Chuck. But eventually, I sort of always made my way back here. I've always been very comfortable in the city and always have loved the history. And of course, that's why I'm so interested in being here tonight.
So when you came to New York, was New York, I mean, New York, we did an exhibition, some of you will remember some years back, called Silicon City. And New York, you know, indeed had really been the home for technology and the development of technology, IBM, Bell Labs. True, it's in New Jersey, but not too far.
So much tech always out in Wall Street, right?
Right, and of course, right, of course. I mean, was New York still a place to be when you landed back here?
Oh, New York is always a place to be.
Well, that goes without saying.
No, but yeah, even when I was young, I mean, I have always been very comfortable in the city for whatever reason, I guess, because my family was here and I would wander around by myself as a little kid. But over the years, New York has always been the center of the universe, right? As far as the tech industry's gone, I mean, Silicon Valley gets talked about as the birthplace of startups and where the technology comes from, but everybody wants to come and show it off here in New York. And that's just been a constant.
Well, that's good to hear, and it's vital still. That's great.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, there are a mix of people here today and virtually, some who know a lot about AI and some who know much less. So maybe we'll start with AI 101. What can you tell us? Where did AI come from? I read an article in the New York Times a few weeks ago claiming that AI has been around since the 1950s, maybe before.
AI is 50 years old, yeah. There's been a lot of research done in the field of artificial intelligence for many, many decades. It took a lot of different forms. And I guess I'm going to fast forward a little bit and talk about the current state, because that'll be easier to understand. There's been tons of history that has gone into developing what we now regard as something that's pretty commonplace. I know many of you have probably tried ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot or something similar, at least tried it out or had seen somebody or like one of your kids or someone trying to use it in that way. Artificial intelligence is really, from the tech industry's perspective, it's an attempt to help people do what they want to do. It's just a piece of software and hardware combination that helps to carry out tasks or answer questions or maybe do research or formulate something in a different way than what you're used to. But it feels like it's somehow an assistant. The whole tech industry has always been writing computer code to make the machine do something very specific. And all of you had to learn the machine's language in order to communicate with it so it would do what you wanted it to do. Artificial intelligence has always had the goal to be able to learn our language, to be able to communicate in whatever language you like to speak so that you can have a conversation with it. So where we're at right now with artificial intelligence is having a piece of technology that can actually have a conversation with you back and forth. And it's, like you type, everybody's used a search engine, right? You type in a few keywords, a bunch of, list of links come back, you click on the pages, you try to figure out what you're looking for. It's very different now with artificial intelligence. You ask a question, it will actually answer you as if you were talking to a person, maybe in the way that a very well-educated, very articulate, well-spoken person would answer you. Unless you ask it to not do that. But for the most part, it has been a huge advancement to get to the point we are today, where we can actually have it generate things on our behalf, do tasks, and do things that we maybe never even dreamed we would be able to. So artificial intelligence has come a very long way in 50 years. But at the heart of it, it really is just computer software and hardware combined together to try to help us do what we like to do.
So any surprises along the way?
Oh, everything is a surprise, yeah. Because people will tell you, even the people who know exactly what we were trying to do with AI are a bit surprised at how fast this has all gone. I can tell you, being in the industry for so long, this amount of innovation this quickly has never, ever happened. It is so fast. Every day we're seeing brand new things that many of us thought we wouldn't see for a very long time, if ever. And so, throughout history, there's been many periods of innovation, but the speed of innovation powered by AI has been incredible.
And you think that speed's likely to get faster and faster with more and more innovations along the way?
Yeah, I guess I'll have to say, unfortunately, yes. The speed of everything has increased. I mean, all of you know this, right? I mean, if you can sort of feel it all around you, the speed of information traveling around the globe, the speed of finding out new things, being able to get things done, it's all going faster. Business is faster. Sports are faster. I mean, everything that we come into contact with has been sped up in part through technology, and in part because people are figuring out that they can get more done, or they're becoming more impatient, and they want things to go faster.
What about the cost and the consumption of energy? A lot of people are talking about these days.
Yeah, I love to talk about this. It's funny. It's almost like there's a global meme that goes something like this. The tech companies are destroying the planet with AI, and they don't care. That couldn't be farther from the truth. There are, I don't know how many people who think about this all day long, every day, trying to design very green data centers, trying to come up with clean energy sources. The company I work for, Microsoft, has recently invested a lot in clean energy sources, has done a bunch of experiments to figure out how can we do better at being able to power the increased consumption of these AI systems and the data centers that need to power them. But like, trust me, we are not out to destroy the world, to bring a new technology to you. What we're trying to do is figure out how to advance society, advance a lot of the things we want to do by also being green and sustainable.
So let's talk about some of those things. Healthcare. Maybe we'll have a bit of a lightning round, and I'll ask you to talk
Sure.
about where we are now and where the future is likely to go. So let's start with healthcare.
Sure. I like to make an example, and this is not strictly AI-based, but you all remember before the pandemic, we were never, ever going to get a video call with our doctor, right? That was never going to happen. It just absolutely was never going to happen. 3 weeks later, it happened, right? Because it had to. What artificial intelligence is doing for medicine is assisting doctors, nurses, physicians of all types to be able to look at results, test results, be able to look at patient histories, to look for things that maybe people might miss. The classic example is reading X-rays or MRIs. People are very good at that because we as humans pick up on subtle, small inconsistencies. We're very good at pattern recognition and seeing when something is off. But it turns out machines are actually a lot better at that than us. And so there are great advances to being able to use, or great advantages to being able to use technology to look at things that are very visual in nature, because they don't get tired, they're not irritated, they're not distracted. They can actually do the job quite well, which is assisting in diagnosis and treatment.
There will still be a role. I'm looking at a doctor right here who happens to read X-rays. So.
Absolutely. Right? I mean, there are certain things that machines are good at, and certain things people are good at, and there's like an overlap. But I think overall, you may be happy to have some surprises every once in a while. Maybe we missed something.
Okay, so moving on. What about self-driving cars?
Oh, yeah. Okay. It's a really great idea. And they're doing experiments, like this, right? So in the desert, like in Arizona and California and other places, you can call something like an Uber, like a Waymo, that'll show up and no driver. And it's kind of amusing when you see like the kids make videos, like the car shows up and there's nobody in it, and they're taking videos. Look, there's no driver. It's so cool. We can actually perfect this over time, but I don't work in that industry. I'm not an expert on autonomous vehicles, but I know that the technology for the sensors and the vision and the way that we're using these things together can improve to the point where it can be pretty accurate, and we can probably figure this out, certainly in our lifetimes.
That's great. Great for people who won't have to pass the driver's test, right?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I have a garage here in Soho, which is a lot of people and a lot of events come in. And the heads of some of the large transportation organizations in New York were there one night. And they were talking about doing experiments with drones that were autonomous to take cargo across the rivers. which I thought was super interesting. So what they're thinking about is maybe getting some of the trucks off of the bridges, not by having self-driving trucks on the bridge, but by using drones to fly the cargo across the water in an autonomous way, which is really interesting.
That's great. Maybe we won't have traffic jams in the future. That would suit all of us.
Far.
What about finance and investments?
Well, that's one of the most interesting things to me. So I've always been interested in financial markets. A lot of the work that I do with data visualization is to try to help people to understand the dynamic nature of things that are very chaotic and sort of spin in real time. What AI has helped us to do on the machine learning part of things is to look at the history of transactions, certain events, to help us correlate much faster than we can do what's happening in world events, what's happening in stock market, what's happening with certain investments, what's happening in markets. These are things that we could all do. I mean, we all did this manually. I mean, talk to anybody who's worked on Wall Street. Everybody knows how to do this by hand, or in some ways like semi-automated. But the machine learning and artificial intelligence systems that we are able to build now are so much faster. And they're able to gather information so much quicker to help you make a better decision that it's almost like night and day.
Okay. So let's see. Let's go to the future of work.
Oh, well, nobody wants to work. Right? Okay, so I get asked, companies, Microsoft's top customers come into the garage all the time. And so I get to talk to them about their businesses. My job, I guess you could say, is to disrupt the thinking of some of the world's most successful companies. And a lot of what they're stuck on is trying to get people to return to work. You know, we sort of had it good for a while, right? You could stay home, you can do what you're doing. People figured out they can actually do their jobs that way. And now there's sort of that incredible tension between everybody who wants to work remotely and everybody who wants you to come back to work. And so what we talk about is what is the future of work exactly, and how does AI play into that? The truth is, it's already happening. Like, we've all learned to work remotely in whatever ways we can. And sometimes there's somebody not in the office or you can't be in the office, so we've all figured that out. But what's happening behind the scenes is that the software that we're using to run our meetings or to do our collaborations or to create the work is being powered by AI in the background. And it's helping to do summaries or helping to suggest things or to point out, some things that maybe it would have taken us a while to get to. Anybody who has asked, like ChatGPT or Microsoft Copilot to summarize a meeting for them is pretty happy after about 15 seconds that they didn't have to actually watch the whole, 90-minute, meeting summary. We are making a lot of advances in the future of work because of AI, because it's helping us to do some of the things that are just tedious or we just don't like doing.
Okay. Let's go to ethics.
Okay. I love talking about this. This is one of the most important things that we can talk about. So you may know, Microsoft has been working with artificial intelligence for quite some time. I think over 5 years ago, we established something called the Responsible AI Group, which really, night and day for the last 5 years, have been working on how to integrate ethics into what we do, how to govern what we do as a company. And you'll be happy to know that there is a group that meets 3 times a week that looks at everything that we put out to make sure that it adheres to our set of responsible AI principles, which in part includes ethics. But the bigger story is, so I'm also responsible for a capstone project at NYU this semester. And I've asked the students to consider whether there should be an ethics checker and an aesthetics checker built into Microsoft Office. Is that something that we want to be questioned on or have a discussion about in our normal way of working? And it's super interesting. I think that all of us would like to conduct ourselves ethically, but there's gray area, things are not always clear. And the question is, do you want your software to be having that conversation with you? So that's up to the incredibly bright students to figure out the answer to.
Well, I hope you'll come back and let us know what they've figured out.
Of course.
So you seem incredibly upbeat and positive about AI, which makes sense since that's your field. You should be upbeat and positive about it. Last time we talked in Palm Beach, you said something that really surprised me, and I didn't have a chance to probe, which you suggested that AI could really think. what does that mean? I mean, most people think AI is limited by the corpus that's fed to it. And that isn't really thinking, certainly not thinking how a human would think. There's not that kind of creativity to it. So maybe you can talk a little bit now about what it would mean for AI to eventually think.
Yeah. First of all, I agree with what you said. Artificial intelligence doesn't think in the way that humans think right now. It doesn't even really reason in the way that we reason or consider. It's starting to. We're starting to build neural network systems that know how to mimic how we do what we do, with our thoughts and considering this and that. But for right now, the machines may appear to be thinking or considering, but they're really just sort of following a set of patterns that they've learned of how to get to an adequate or a good response. Eventually, I do believe that we will figure out how to mimic the way that people do think in certain ways. I don't know. I'm not a brain scientist, so I can't tell you exactly how that would work. But I do know that we are, as doctors and scientists, we're learning enough about brain science, and we're learning enough about how these neural networks work on the AI side that it will probably do a decent job of appearing to consider the way that we consider. And there's some experiments that you can all do very easily. You can just ask these systems, whether it's Microsoft Copilot, ChatGPT, whatever your favorite system is, and just ask it to consider things, or ask it something that you would ask a person and see how it does. And that's sort of the point that we're at right now. We've crossed over from having to just think that it was a better search engine. It's actually something that can do tasks for us and can help us to complete things, or maybe help us with a decision, and sort of go back and forth in a way that one of your friends or a coworker or a teammate might.
Well, that sounds great, and this sounds like a good segue into, I know you want to show us some things that will...
I would love to try this. Yeah, if you're up for a demo, you want to try something out? Okay.
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
And we will have time for Q&A, so I know that you should have had a note card on your way in. If you don't, my colleagues will be handing them out. So feel free to jot your questions down. We'll get to them later on. Am I going to be in the way?
No.
Okay.
No. I think you can see, right? Okay. So when ChatGPT came out about 18 months ago, it took over, right? It went around the world in a few days because it was so interesting to be able to ask a question and have something that we've all been used to search engines just spitting out a whole list of things for us to have to poke through and look at, and that's not the right one, let me go to the next one. This thing seemed to answer like a person. It gave you an answer. But what we've been able to get to now, 18 months later, is to actually have a conversation as if you were talking to a person. So I was going to try to demonstrate something for you now.
How can I make your evening a bit brighter?
Hey, Copilot, I'm here at the New York Historical Society. You know me pretty well. What do you think I would be most interested in seeing here at the New York Historical Society?
I'd bet...
Go
The
ahead.
pivotal and often unsung role women have played in shaping history. Pretty fascinating stuff. If you head there, you'll have to tell me all about it.
Hey,
Or
tell me
something else
this.
on your...
What do you think the most interesting exhibit is at the museum?
The Black Dolls exhibit seems gripping. It's all about handmade dolls from the 19th century to today, reflecting Black history and culture. Embracing art and identity in one place sounds like a unique window into a lesser-known part of history. Intrigued?
Oh, yeah. You know what I'm really intrigued about? Where can I get a really good burger near here?
I'd recommend checking out J.G. Mellon. Iconic, classic vibe, and their burger, juicy perfection. It's a local favorite, and one bite in, you'll know why.
Ah, okay. Hey, listen, Copilot. I've got to leave town tomorrow. What do you think the traffic's going to be like going into JFK tomorrow morning around 6 a.m.?
Leaving the city bright and early, huh? Given its rush hour, expect some traffic congestion for sure. The Van Wyck Expressway can be especially brutal. To be safe, give yourself plenty of buffer time.
Yeah? Hey, what would be a good book that's come out recently for me to read on my flight?
Tom Lake by Anne Patchett is a solid pick. It's a powerful exploration of family dynamics and the stories we tell ourselves. Perfect for diving into a different world while you're flying in the sky. Think it'll make your list?
Okay. I like that. Thanks, Copilot.
Always happy to help. Later, Mike.
I have to ask, why is your interlocutor speaking with a British accent?
Well, because because I'm very amused by British accents, I have to say. So I asked it to speak that way to me. Okay, so that was a demonstration of me talking to an artificial intelligence agent. I could have asked it anything, about anything. It may not have answered me, the way that I expected it to, but we're to that point where you don't have to prompt it. You remember about a year ago, all of your kids were going to be prompt engineers, right? Because we were saying, oh, prompt engineering is the future of everything. You have to learn how to structure your questions exactly right. There's no need to do that anymore. We've actually advanced to the point where you literally can just talk to it like it's your trusted coworker, or someone, maybe I'm not going to say physician yet, but you never know. But we are getting to the point now where the computer has actually learned our language. If I was fluent in Italian, I could have spoken Italian to it, or Spanish, or any other language. We are getting to the point where these things truly will be the assistant that many of us had hoped that we would have.
That is very cool. Do you have anything else to show us?
Well, I mean, there's lots of things that you can do, but I'm just going to sort of compare and contrast what you just saw. Previously, if I was interacting with an AI, I would type something in, and it would spit back out a bunch of text, and I would look at it and go, oh, that's not that. I didn't even have to do that. I was just able to have a conversation, change my subjects. It was telling me what I needed to know. I could have interrupted it and asked it to go back and go deeper on something. But really, this is at the heart of what I want you to take away from today. We have actually advanced to the point of being able to just talk to our computers. Now, many of you have Alexa or other similar devices in your homes, and you could talk to it and you could ask it what the weather is going to be like. Could you please reorder my Tide Pods, or whatever you use your Alexa for. But it wasn't like that. It wasn't an open-ended conversation where it felt like they were paying attention to you and they were getting it right more often than not. Not once did you hear it say, I'm sorry, could you please repeat that? Or I didn't understand what you said, or I don't know how to answer that question. So we've actually come quite a far way in a pretty short amount of time. So there's a lot more. I mean, I would just say, sorry, I'm going to make a Microsoft commercial for you. Our best work is completely free. If you just go to copilot.microsoft.com, literally our best work is out there into the world for free. You can use it from any web browser, your phone, it doesn't matter. And the reason we're doing that is to give people an opportunity to see what you can do with it, just to experiment.
So let's talk a little bit about, with all this great stuff, let's talk a little bit about why so many people say they hate AI. They hate this new world. Teachers.
Yeah, I know. You and I talked about this a little bit. So I'm going to rewind a little bit. So we've all seen this movie, right? Where AI comes and destroys the world. And I don't think anybody can guarantee that's not going to happen. But I will say, as long as people are paying attention, this is a technology like any other technology. Yes, it appears to be very advanced, but we always advocate there's got to be a human in the loop, right? People have got to be part of this conversation always. That holds true for education as well. So yes, students think this is a great way to get out of writing. And you know what? We may have crossed that threshold where our kids and our grandchildren may not write in the same way that you and I have learned to write. It may be a totally different deal for them. They may actually start by asking their agent to go off and create a draft. And what teachers should be doing, in my opinion, is embracing this and not trying to shield students from it, or not trying to prevent their students from utilizing these new tools. Now, I like to tell the story of when I was a kid and we introduced pocket calculators. People lost their minds, right? When pocket calculators came out. That was going to be the end of mathematics, right? No one would ever know how to multiply or divide ever again. Fast forward to today, it would be kind of silly to not use a calculator to do anything non-trivial, right? Like, why would you not use a calculator? It's ridiculous. In the same way, we may think about using AI for writing and reviewing and collaborating and doing all the things we do in school, just like the pocket calculator. It would be silly to not take advantage of something that could help us in this way. I also think in education, there is a great need to be able to tailor education to the individual. And we're learning, through machine learning and AI agents, we can actually do that in a class of 30 students or a college, university class of 400. You literally can tailor the material to the individual person, to their way of learning. If they're a kinesthetic learner, if they're someone who has to go deep into everything. This is within our reach, and we've been experimenting and trying this out in different ways. So, I love teachers. I just wish that they would consider that perhaps we're already past the point of being able to do anything about this, and to embrace how they can use it for good with their students.
So, strike has just been settled. One of the issues was automation, which these days really means or entails AI. That's clearly an issue, a big issue. I mean, what can you tell us about what comfort can you offer people who fear that they will lose their jobs because AI will take over?
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to say this to you. If you look back through, we're in the New York Historical Society, right? If you look back at history, there has been upheaval and replacement of jobs throughout the history, right, of this country, certainly, and in the world. This is another technological revolution, not so different from the Industrial Revolution and many of the other ones that have happened. Some jobs will disappear because they will be replaced by automation or machinery or something that is really either better or more cost-effective than a person doing it. Other jobs will just transform. These technologies will allow you to basically give you superpowers, right? Will do things on your behalf that might have been tedious, that might have been so time-consuming and so boring that you happily give them up because you can do other things now. But I like to think that this type of automation that is going to be introduced into many facets of what we do will actually be welcome eventually. And people will realize that AI and all these things that we have at our disposal are an opportunity for you to become so much better at what you do now. It will actually help you and not hurt you. You just have to try. You just have to have an open mind and just say, you know what, I'm going to try it out. And I was recently at a conference, and there was a bunch of people who came up to me and said, hey, I really like what you were talking about with AI. What classes should I take? What courses should I take, or what online class should I take to learn AI? And I said, none. You just go to ChatGPT, go to Microsoft Copilot, go to one of these things and just ask it a question like you would ask one of your friends, and start there. And you'll see that you'll very quickly be sort of drawn into trying to have a conversation or trying to stump it or get better ideas for, how would you do this exactly? There's really no reason to think that we would, our livelihoods will be taken away from us because of this technology. Parts of what you do may go away, as they always have throughout history, but they'll transform into something different, and that's the opportunity.
Let's talk about something closer to home. You started out as an artist. What about artists?
There will always be a place for artists and musicians and dancers and writers. There will always be a place for that. The machines can't do what humans do because humans are completely random. I mean, really. We, in a set of milliseconds, we can remember something from our childhood, remember what we ate for breakfast this morning and the color of the lobby as I was walking in, and that could spark a completely new creative thought. Machines can't do that. They don't have all of that experience and history like people do. We're affected by emotion, right? As of right now, machines don't have emotion in that way. So there's so many factors that go into the creative process that we're nowhere near as far as that. Will we get there? Maybe. You know, like maybe we'll approach that, but as an artist and a writer and a technologist, I just don't think the machine will actually surpass the capacity for human creativity, but it may mimic it quite well.
Well, there is art now that's AI generated. Is that art?
Do you like any of it?
That's interesting.
Yeah. Is it real art? Sure. I mean, you know, throughout the ages, artists have always used the newest technology. That's what we do, right? We're like, oh, look at that. That's cool. Let me see what I can do with that. We have always embraced. Now remember, this AI-generated art didn't just come out of nowhere. A human being asked it to do that. Like, you do realize that, right? Like, it's not just sprouting up out of, like, the machines are not taking over the art world because they felt like it. People were asking them to do these things.
I'm intrigued that you used the term agent when you were talking about the person you were, well, the agent you were in conversation with. Sorry about that. Yeah, you can, I guess, easily get seduced into thinking you are really having a conversation with someone. But is that a term of art?
Agent?
Yeah.
Well, in the parlance of artificial intelligence, agents are pieces of software that are, let's say, very specialized pieces of code that know how to do something. And so what we're getting to now is being able to combine multiple agents together on your behalf to create something or to complete a task. So the first part of AI was getting to this conversational nature of the interface. The next part is using agents to be able to go out and do things on our behalf to sort of talk to each other and be able to very efficiently complete a task that maybe would have taken us quite a while to do or might have been even impossible.
So are there some things that you wish AI would be able to do that it isn't able to do?
You mean like my job? I don't know. I'm just completely amazed by the amount of progress we're making every day. Every day I wake up and I look in my social media feed and there's some things I really didn't think I would ever see, and they're here. And so I'm just constantly impressed by that. Are there things I wish it would do? I think that we're getting to the age now where it will start to be able to do mathematics. So the AI systems we have today are not good at math and physics and some of the sciences, but they will start to become very good at those. And so yes, I wish that it could do calculus and differential equations and all the things that I never wanted to do, because I would love to go back and learn those.
Thank you. Okay, so let's take some questions. First round.
No, AI is not going to destroy the world. Just get that out of the way.
You've been so upbeat, it's hard to stump you on something that you think AI will not either solve or improve. What existing science fiction do you think most accurately represents the future of AI?
Wow. Okay, remember, it's not Terminator. I think that if you saw the movie Her, I think that is very prescient. I think that there are people who are going to become lost in the potential of this technology being something to have a relationship with. So I think that's really interesting. It's very well done. I will also say that we haven't talked at all about robotics. One of my other favorite movies, I, Robot, is also very interesting for a different reason, not the bad part of it. The good part of it is that we can embody AI within machinery, within robotics. Robots will become very commonplace in the not too distant future, and maybe not humanoid robots in the way that we see them in the movies, but robots that have very specialized tasks. But they will be able to have conversations just like you can with your phone or your computer.
Okay, what about hacking? Hacking is a huge issue right now. What can you tell us about hacking?
Well, so the term hacking traditionally was a bad thing, right? Like you would hack into a system to try to gain access and information. In the Microsoft Garage, we actually run the world's biggest hackathon. But the way that we think about hacking is a good thing. To us, hacking means to do something very quickly to see if you can do it, to sort of will it into existence as fast as possible, just as an experiment. So hacking for us is a very good thing, and that's how we've become much more curious and experimental as a company by running hackathons and by trying to hack things into existence. But the bad side of hacking, I was just at a conference where there was a cybersecurity expert talking about how AI systems are being used by both people who are experts in offense and defense. And their report was that the good AI is winning over the bad AI at the moment as far as cybersecurity goes. So let's hope that it stays that way.
Okay. What about regulation?
Microsoft has been very vocal about the need for regulation, governance, and actually the Biden administration released a report and also a set of guidelines around what should be done with AI. Microsoft was behind much of that. We released a gigantic report about what we felt needed to be done. Microsoft is actually in favor of regulation. We're in favor of governance and oversight. And we think that there should be like an air brake, right? There should be a stop button to turn these systems off. And so you may be surprised to hear that, but we've been advocates for making sure that people do pay attention and that we do stay in the loop and stay on top of what's happening.
Are there any threats that you've encountered or foresee?
Well, I mean, all of us have been sort of exposed to spam and phishing in our emails, correct? Right? Text messages and phishing. Well, in the past, those used to have tells, like there would be misspellings and typos and the logo wasn't quite right. They've gotten really good. And in part, it's because some machine learning and AI algorithms have been applied to spam and phishing mails. So I would just say be very, very, very careful. If you get a message, first of all, most of your credit card companies and your banks and whoever, they're not going to send you a message asking you for your login or your credit card. They're just not going to do that. So don't ever think that that's really who's sending that. So that is really the most, I would say, dangerous threat to all of us is phishing and spams have gotten very, very good.
And what about, where, this isn't a question from the audience, but I'll ask you anyway.
Of course you are.
We're in a political environment that's intense, heated, fractious, unpleasant. And there certainly have been many claims, probably verified claims, that people like your agent have been entities like your agent have been created to act as though they are giving information, which is disinformation. What can you tell us about this?
Yeah, that's been going on for quite some time. And a lot of the tech industry is trying to do something about it. It's not that, I'll just say it this way. Perhaps in the old days, we would create technology and sort of throw it over the fence and say, like, have fun, tell us what you think. But I think the industry has sort of grown a conscience, in part based on what's happened with social media programs and what's happened with sort of the unraveling of society. And I think the tech industry feels a great responsibility to do something about this and to consider before we release things, how they might be used. And so specifically about disinformation, we're looking at how these systems are going to be used by bad actors or by people who just are nefarious. They want to do things that are clearly unethical. And we're starting to examine before we even release things how that might happen and what might we do about that if it does. And build sort of safeguards into the systems to be able to catch things before they get too far. I'm not a cybersecurity expert, nor am I a disinformation expert, but it seems to me the only way to stop this from happening, from people putting out disinformation, is to examine every single thing you do at the point of you pressing the publish button. Now you have to ask yourself, do you want every single thing that you share with anyone else to be gone through every single time? Because that might be the only way that we ever stop disinformation. And then the question becomes, well, who's the arbiter of what's true and what's not? Who's the arbiter of what's ethical and what's unethical? And so those kinds of questions start to creep in, and I don't think anybody wants to trust anyone else, as the authority on these things. And it was very easy in the old days, right? I'm sure you have exhibits here that talk about Walter Cronkite and like the old days of being able to trust the media. We're so far past that now, a lot of people don't know who to trust. And so all we can do as an industry is try to anticipate how these things may be used, for bad reasons and try to stop it.
So here's a different kind of question, but going back to your agent, should AI be used for companionship?
I'm going to say no comment on that one. I don't know. We're only on this planet for so long. Everybody's different. And I think if that's what you want to do with the technology, who's to say that's not the right thing?
Okay.
I like people, personally. Just saying. I would rather interact with any of you than my agent.
Okay, so this conversation that you had, could you always identify that you're having a conversation with an agent as opposed to a companion? Would you be able to discern the difference?
Well, that's interesting. So, I'm not a psychologist. I play one at work sometimes. But I would say, again, these things don't just come out of thin air, right? We ask for these things currently, right? So I ask for Copilot to help me finish an assignment at work. I ask for a restaurant recommendation. I ask, if my flight's going to be on time. It's not like these things just pop out of nowhere and start talking to me as if they were a long-lost friend. Like your text messages that you get, like, hey, what are you doing? It's like, clearly this is someone trying to phish you. That's not happening with AI systems yet. But beware, because you never know that next text message could be some agent that someone nefarious programmed to do that to you.
Okay, so you had your conversation. Is there a record? Is it being recorded somewhere? Is there something to be worried about? That all of your personal information, the book that you're going to read on your flight and everything else is now part of some huge store of knowledge about you?
So privacy has always been a paramount concern for Microsoft and many other tech companies. We try very hard to make sure that, and we actually make a promise to our customers, if you're going to use our software to do whatever you do, we will keep it secure, we will keep it private, and we will not train these AI models on your information. So, we're not sort of recording everything that's happening in the background and making our systems better. There are companies and there are things where that happens, but for the most part, we are trying to keep your information private and safe in the way that, if you trust us with your documents of whatever kind and your music and other things, we have the same kind of promise. When we're using an AI system, we're trying to keep that as private and secure as we can.
So,
but that said,
yeah.
you should assume in most situations that what you're doing, what you're typing, what you're creating, what you're sending can be monitored, or it can be looked at in some way. That's just good sense, right? To know that nothing is quite as secure as we would like it to be.
Okay, AI seems to have advanced a lot. Why are customer chatbots still so bad?
That's a really good question, because they're not using Microsoft technology, clearly. Okay. In your everyday life, where do you use AI the most? Well, so probably the place that I use AI the most is where I used to go to a search engine to look for something. I now use Copilot as basically in any of those situations. If I want to find, the address of some place, I might do that. If I wanted to figure out, like, who was that actor that was in this movie that I just saw? Anything that I used to use a search engine for is where I use AI for, mostly. It does help me in my work, because I figured out how to get it to do certain sub-tasks that I would do that took me a long time. And so within the Office programs, like whether it's Excel or PowerPoint or Outlook or Teams, it's helping me to do some of that work, but mostly I use it as a replacement for a search engine.
Is AI already being used in ways we don't realize?
Of course.
Give us some examples.
One of the best examples is many of you have iPhones in your pocket or in your purse. The iPhone has used machine learning and AI for years, and you never knew it because we never talked about it that way. But it has been learning about you for years and years and years. And it's true. This is how you're able to find your car. This is how Netflix knows what you want to watch next. This is how Amazon knows the exact right thing to suggest to you. That's all machine learning and artificial intelligence. This has been going on for a very long time. It's just we as an industry and we as society did not talk about it as AI until ChatGPT sort of burst onto the scene, and then everybody had access to it. It was democratized and became the topic of so many headlines.
So we touched on this a little bit before, but let's go a little bit further. What about intellectual property? Mm-hmm. Is AI a threat to maintaining intellectual property?
Yes.
Safeguarding it.
But let's go back a little bit first. So when AI first came out, there were some models, AI models, are these, just think of it like a big database. It's a collection of information. Some models were trained by what they call scraping, which is an act of going out to web pages or looking through documents and collecting all the information. Some of that information may have been copywritten or been part of trademarks, or were just people's own work, and probably should not have been collected without their consent. What Adobe did probably almost a year ago is they made a promise to their customers that if you used their software that created images, the promise was the source of those new creations were all licensed. They had properly paid for the licenses or attributed the original work to the artist. So that when you said, hey, Adobe Firefly, make me an image of the New York Historical Society with me standing in front and like a gigantic whale behind me, it would use imagery that was properly licensed before it created that new image. That was their promise. Microsoft has since then come out and said, if you're going to use our AI agents to create new things, we will make sure that whatever the source material was properly either attributed or licensed or gathered in the right way. So the industry has learned from our early experiments and has figured out that we do need to attribute things properly, using people's intellectual property rights. And I hope from now on we will have a much better track record of being able to produce new things that are based on either your own creativity or work that has been properly attributed. Now, there's a lot of case law that is being re-examined. There's a lot of new situations where intellectual property and AI are sort of clashing. We all are probably familiar with fair use, right, as artists. So you can take something that exists in the world, and as long as you treat it in a new artistic way, it becomes your own creation. Does AI have that same right to do that? And there's still to be determined how this plays out. But there's a lot of consternation. There's a lot of anxiety, a lot of hand-wringing over whether artists are going to be completely ripped off by these new systems that can produce things so quickly. Just so you know, behind the scenes, the thinking again is we should not allow these systems to do that. And so we're trying to sort of cut it off upstream, so to speak, from happening.
This is an interesting question. What might cause AI's growth to plateau?
Well, I guess you can imagine that there wouldn't be enough information to feed it, or enough energy to power it, or enough demand to use it. And at some point, it may just sort of plateau. Now, in today's world, that's really hard to imagine because we're building as fast as we can. And there's a lot of things we haven't even gotten to yet. There's a horrible hurricane again headed for Florida. In the realm of weather forecasting, they haven't even really, I mean, they do amazing work, but they haven't gotten to the good part yet, where they'll be able to actually more accurately predict using machine learning and AI techniques where these storms will end up, just, in real time. So there's a lot of things that will continue to power the demand for these systems. So it's a bit hard to imagine that it would plateau, but those would be the factors if it ever did.
Another similarly interesting question is, are only wealthy countries going to be the beneficiaries of all of this growth in technology? Mm-hmm. Will the mastery of AI in wealthy countries increase the disparity between wealthy countries and less wealthy countries?
Yeah, I went to a presentation. So being New Yorkers, because of the traffic, the United Nations General Assembly happened a couple weeks back. At the UNGA, Brad Smith, who's Microsoft's president, talked a lot about the global south, meaning a lot of countries that we would consider not as technologically advanced, without access to some of the resources that we may have. We are all, meaning the countries, the participating member states of the UN, have all been talking about how to make sure that this technology makes it to the global south, and make sure that we have programs in place and we have a plan to make sure that we can help people. Just like we went from no communication to mobile phones in some of these areas, we're thinking now of going from no computers to AI-infused or AI-powered devices of some sort to help the developing countries get to where they need to get to. I saw, I think I'm quoting this statistic correctly, 1.3 billion people don't have access to electricity at all. And that's only in one region of the world. And so now imagine what can we do with not only just electricity, but with some of the technology to help some of them. When you look at an image shot from space of the Earth, at night, and you look at the African continent, only the very edges of it are lit. There's vast, the entire interior, for the most part, is dark in the way that we would think about it. And so there's a tremendous amount of responsibility and opportunity for us to be able to deploy these technologies for good.
So just to end on a more upbeat note, if you were advising a young person what to study in school these days to be prepared for 21st century AI innovations, what advice would you give?
Oh, okay, you're not going to believe this. What they should really study, so there's no major. So if you look at the majors that kids could go get a degree in today, none of them are the right major. But the one that I think is closest is actually the humanities. What is going to be critically important is not hard skills. It's going to be the way that people can solve problems, the way that they can be able to understand new concepts, to be able to problem solve in real time, to be able to be super creative when they have to on demand. These are things that we're sort of headed to now. We're seeing it in our own jobs. So if you have anyone, whether it's a kid or grandchild, tell them that problem solving, right, being creative and clever and being able to collaborate with other people is critically important. Hard skills, there will always be a place for physicians and plumbers, and until robots come and fix our pipes, we're going to have to do that ourselves. But there's going to be a lot of need for people to be a lot more intelligent and to be able to communicate a lot better than we do now, because collaboration is the key to business right now. And so trying to get people back into the arts is what I suggest. There's a tremendous amount of good that comes from kids being involved in the arts in any way, whether that's music or dance or painting and drawing, doesn't matter, because their creativity, their problem solving, and their ability to express themselves comes out. And that's exactly what we need these days.
Yes, I think we can all applaud on that. Well, thanks so much, Mike. Mike's books, again, are available for purchase in our NY History store. Thanks very much to all of you for terrific questions tonight. Pleasure seeing you as always, and good evening.
Thank you.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you.